You guys talk about, well, the generations, they each have, I guess, their an event that plays a huge role in their formation and just how they see the world, much like what's going on right now.
Mhm.
Do you guys have an event or two that you would say shaped the way you view the world?
Totally. Let me start. First of all, I have a brother. My older brother is a builder, so he doesn't consider himself a boomer, but obviously the generation before me was totally shaped by World War II. That was the defining thing. And they went as heroes. They went overseas to Asia, to Europe. They won that war. They came back, and all of a sudden there was this pent-up demand to get married, to have children, and to buy stuff, right?
Right.
And so they did. And so that was the defining thing for them. They created factories, they created prosperity. But then we in the 60s, we were growing up and looking at that like they're a bunch of materialists. I remember so vividly being against my parents because all they cared about was their house, their cars, getting a boat, getting a house at the lake. And I'm like, the Vietnam War was going on and they didn't give a crap. They were like materialistic. And so we were shaped by the war, the Vietnam War, which we didn't believe in and didn't want to go fight. And then, of course, the assassination of Kennedy, and then the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr., and the Watergate scandal. So we became very anti-establishment because of all those things.
What do you think define the Xer, the Gen X? I know we don't have one present speaking for themselves, but we all.
Let's see. They were born from 64 to 80, and I don't know what happened during those years.
I did a deep dive into studying, examining the effects of the Cold War. I'm talking about during the 80s, not the 50s, but the last days of the Cold War.
I was gonna say the revolution, like the Industrial Revolution. If you bring that all together, you bring in what's happening within the 80s, right? I think that they were.
That's when technology was exploded.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Yeah.
Bill Gates, Steve Jobs.
I was gonna say the Steve Jobs commercial. Remember where he's running?
Oh yeah.
Throws the shit.
Yeah.
That I think was Gen X, man. When I think of Gen X, it's like that's where I think how they grew up through this world of uncertainty of what's happening.
Yep.
And then they're all of a sudden their parents at the age of 40 were having kids.
Right.
Like, right. And then all of a sudden we became, and they were like, what's going on? And then all of a sudden tech hit, boom. And all of a sudden they're like, all right, everybody here. And it's like, wait. So I think Generation X fell into the status quo.
Yeah.
They go to work. They go to the gym.
Mm-hmm.
They go to church on Wednesday. Oh, now it's Friday. We go out to dinner. Oh, we go to church. So I think they fell into this middle generation because everything was happening so fast. And they were told, just like we were, do what you're told. Oh, the whole different. And I think they stuck with that. So I think that kind of just helped define them with all this uncertainty that was with them.
They started off, if they call millennials entitled, they call the silent generation, or the builders silent. Time magazine called them that in the 50s.
I remember.
So Generation Xers were known as the slackers. But it's hilarious how they're now, how they started to turn into a generation that appreciated the status quo. I can't even think of many Xer protest movements. When it comes to millennials, I can think of Occupy Wall Street, Black Lives Matter. But as far as Xers are concerned, I can't think of a defining.
I got two, MTV and VH1.
Okay.
That was their movement. I mean,
right. Good point.
Think about it. I mean, I hate to say it like that, but you notice how that's gone away with the millennial generation.
Right. We killed MTV with TRL.
It's done.
We took the soul out of it.
That was them, man. Like, if you talk to any Gen Xers or anything, it's like they would rather have VH1 back.
Right.
Like they'll be like, man, I want my David Bowie. I want to get at this. And we're like,
I would say they contributed so much to the culture.
They did.
To music.
Oh, God.
That's where they rebelled, I think, via the music.
Yep.
Hip hop to alternative. So
Music
they
is
definitely
very-
had an impact.
But I think
they were the
you see in
first.
the book that they're scrappy, and I think
Yeah.
that's the more relevant. Is that that's Generation X. They're scrappy. But when you think of that Gen X, you kind of think of Saved by the Bell. You know what I mean? You think of
Right.
those shows. You think of Family Matters. You think of those types of people. That's the Gen X that I think of. You know what I mean?
Mm-mm.
Is like when
Mhm.
I picture, it's like they're in the middle.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? So it's yeah, I don't know. But again, I'd love to have a Gen Xer give their opinion
Yeah.
as well. You know?
Strauss and Howe, the writers of the Fourth Turning Theory, they call Gen X the nomad, that generation, which is scrappy. You mentioned scrappy.
Yeah.
They call a nomad. You said you admitted that you're not familiar with the Fourth Turning Theory, but you basically validated a lot of the things that they say about the generation.
Yeah. And like I said, I appreciate every one of them because again, they're like our brothers and sisters and our parents. So, and you know, I would say so millennials, because that's really what you asked, right? I mean, I kind of went off on Xers, but if you look at millennials, I always say I'm very different, right? When it comes to what shaped us. And I don't believe it was so much of how it shaped us, but how this blueprint, how we started to look at everything. Because in 2000, September 11th, I mean, I was sitting in high school in a HTML coding class. Do I remember? Yeah, I watched the second building explode. I watched the plane hit. I mean, it still gives me goosebumps to this day. Did that define me?
Right.
No.
I've noticed so many.
Mhm.
I've noticed so many first wave millennials though love to get into the story of where they were when 9/11 happened.
Yeah,
It seems like almost like the Kennedy moment for older generations.
Right. Some of them were already 18 and 20. Like my brother was on the bridge from Philly to New York. He saw the planes hit
Oh, wow.
the building. He told me, because I called dad and was crying on the phone, you know, like not crying, but screaming, what's going on? Because my brother was sitting on the bridge in Philadelphia watching this happen. So I do agree that it did. But I think that as we've seen so much with technology and everything, again, if you go on YouTube right now, you can check out anything that's happened in all the wars. You could see so much stuff, right? And I think that it's because we started seeing a lot of this, we were exposed to a lot of it, right? It didn't so much as effective. And then going into the Great Recession, did a lot of people lose their jobs? Did a lot of people go into really heartfelt moments? Yes, I do. But then I was buying a house and creating a business in that time period. Right. So it's hard for me to say what shaped the millennial because, ready? Hans is probably in the same position as me in 2008, 2009, getting out of his corporate job and figuring out how to survive. And I believe if you always have that nature to hustle, figure out how to survive, creativity, then it's going to move past that. But if you're, as I call, a duck in society, and you're going to go to work, act like a duck, quack like a duck, and just do your normal thing, collect your paycheck, then yeah, I think some of those moments have defined you because you might have lost your job. You might have not thought to, when you, just like now during COVID-19, you know how many friends of mine say, all I'm doing is just sitting around doing nothing, yelling at my kids all day, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, have you thought about a podcast? Have you thought about this? Have you thought about marketing? And they're like, I don't have time for that. Right? So I definitely think there's a different millennial, a different boomer, a different Xer. Yeah. I do believe that some of these moments, as we've said in the book, like 9/11, like the recession, certain people dying, right? So when celebrities started dying, we started feeling the impact, right? Even though might be your celebrity, the boomers, right? But we felt the impact when Whitney Houston died because we grew up listening to that music, right? When Michael Jackson, I know it was their era, but we were kids learning music. Millennials. Time.
We grew up, I think we grew up in a position where we're able to tap into any type of culture, like just from our computer or from a device.
And we learned it growing up. So I agree. There's a lot of things that shaped us. My life was a little bit different. It shaped me in a different way. When the recession hit, I said, I got to work harder because now I know that people are going to give out POs like this. Whoa, whoa, whoa. So it was like, I knew I had to work harder. I knew I had to grind. I knew I had to hustle. So, and yeah, I had a lot of friends telling me, you're wasting your time. You're wasting your money. Okay, that's fine. But I do agree that certain things did shape people like 9/11, like the Great Recession, and like certain deaths within our world that created people to kind of go into, wow, I only do it this way because of this reason. And again, generalization, that's why we have to get past them.
Well, did 9/11 create a before and after moment for you, Hans? And do you think that same for your cohorts?
Yeah, yeah. I think it created a huge before and after for anybody who was an adult at that time, whether you were a builder, boomer, Gen X, or millennial. Absolutely. It was a scary moment, and it was very unsettling for all of us. Closest, I think, the only time we were ever attacked as a country on our own soil, other than Pearl Harbor.
Pearl Harbor, and honestly, a little bug thing called the coronavirus that seems to be attacking us.
Yeah,
Hey,
it's crazy.
Darius, did you have a additional?
That was pretty much it. Just off of what you guys were saying, that I mean, that goes into that concept of creative destruction, right? During a crisis, some people, there's a lot of stories of different businesses coming up during a crisis. And so when things finally build back up, you know, they're super resilient and they know they can pretty much withstand anything else that comes their way.
yeah, and we didn't get into this, but Patrick and I, in our book, Millennial Boom, and by the way, Millennial Boom does not mean we're trying to blow up millennials.
Or boomers.
We're talking about the millennials and the baby boomers and the explosions that happen between these generations, and we're just trying to create understanding. But we talk about in one chapter's millennials rewrite the workplace, and I have a picture of a beautiful building. I built a 50,000 square foot international headquarters during my tenure, and today I wouldn't build that building. And we believe this whole crisis that we're in is going to have a lot of positive benefit.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to teach people that you don't have to be in the same building to hold people accountable.
I love the picture of your workplace.
Yeah.
Very organized. And then we have Patrick's workplace.
Right.
There's kid stuff all over the place.
Yeah, we're going to learn, a lot of companies are going to learn they don't need offices and they don't need buildings, and they're actually going to save a lot of money. Whether they like it or not, they're being forced to learn about telecommuting and distance learning for the educational system, and just, we talked the other day about holding people accountable. I'm a huge, in my leadership books, I teach a lot about good delegation, because there's so much dirty delegation going on. And people think, if I'm not in the building and if I'm not watching them and if they're not under my thumb, how can I possibly hold them accountable? Now they're having to learn to hold people accountable through the internet, through Zoom. And that's, I think it's a good thing.
Well, I mean, so you mentioned how the culture war in the workplace creates division.
Yeah.
Do you think not being in the same place, a centralized location, how do you think unity will continue?
I think that it's going to be interesting, because I talk about how I used to, when I started, I had a dress code, and we had this real neat building, and we had rules about how you could decorate your workplace. Well, all that's gone out the window, because everybody's working from home. And how is a company going to tell you, hey, Ryan, don't be on a Zoom call with a blue wall behind you, That's just not our.
Get those San Diego Charger crap out here.
Yeah. What's up with this? That's not part of our brand. I just think a lot of those old culture wars between boomers and millennials are being forced to go away. And I believe a lot of boomers are terrified about Zoom. I've talked to a lot of them because they're afraid and they don't want to lose face and admit that they're not tech savvy. But I think it's a good thing. I think it's actually going to, if you're willing to learn and you're willing to be humble, you boomers out there, you can actually bridge the gap more than ever between you and the other generations. Because a lot of that culture wars, like you were saying, Ryan, at the workplace are they've fallen by the wayside. We're not in the same building, but we still need to work together.
Mm-hmm. I mean, to Han's point, just with what we've been doing with our group, we've connected to people, both, of course, boomers in the group and other millennials in the group. And in the book, you guys mentioned that millennials see technology first and foremost as a communication tool, not as like this wedge to separate the generations.
It's true.
Yeah, and I think that something I've learned from Patrick, because one of the common complaints of boomers is, you guys are always on your devices. You're always on your devices. You guys are so addicted to your devices. And what we have to learn is that's the way you live. It's the way you communicate. It's the way you work. You're not all just playing games on your devices. You're actually living your life. And that's hard for us boomers to get used to, but we have to get used to it.
Yeah, it's true. Very true. I think that too, that with the new situation of working from home, like I've always worked from home, and I talk about it in the book, is that I used to take care of my kids. And it was, listen, I go back to, and I say it again, man, I listen to Kevin Hart. It's like, why am I going to pay $900 in daycare a month, right? When my baby can be at home with me. I have the availability and the flexibility to work from home. And really, when you're a business owner, yeah, you've got money, but you also have to think about where you're spending it, what expenditures. And that $900 a month going towards daycare just so your daughter can be out of your hair, to me, it was different. So I had people going, are you at work today? I hear a baby crying in the background. And now it's like, you remember your email was, hey, don't worry if the kids are in the background. Don't worry about this, because that's what we want to prove. And it's crazy because 10 years ago, I literally had a company stop doing business with me because they were like, look, man, you've got your own world going. You work from your house. You know what? That's you. And I see this guy still is in the industry today. And I told Hans this, like, if this is a guy that said he would not do Zoom calls, he would not do this. I hope some of those people either strive or finally retire. I want to be real here at this point, because at this point, you want to talk about millennials having to wait and be patient. If you're not willing to adapt, change, and pivot, bye. It's time to go, because with this world changing so fast, with all of us being on the line, I'd rather give someone like Hans an opportunity to stay in because of how his focus is and being the person that he is and always evolving, adapting, and pivoting, than giving it to the guy that's just been here for 40 years and creates the POs. I could easily hand those POs to someone like Hans today that has better leadership, and he would grow my business tenfold than the guy that just sits there and knows he collects POs. You know what I mean? That as at the office, creating busy work. So I think that this opportunity, we are going to see who is thriving to be the better leader, the manager, the salesman, or the person that goes, it's just so dead that, it's crazy. Business is down. And I said a post on this the other day on Facebook. I said, you ever notice those guys that are always complaining about their business, telling you that they're unlucky, telling you that they never get that chance, and they're always asking, what do you got going on? What can I get in on you? And they're always asking for handouts. I hope those people it's a whole different strategy, but those people are going to learn or they're going to be gone. And I think that time is going to be showing a very realistic view in this world we're living in with COVID-19, with managers and employees everywhere.
Have you learned anything as far as managing Gen Z?
I have. I actually have. My best point is, and I learned it from my 12-year-old nephew, okay? And I learned this, which has now helped me adapt with Gen Z, or the Zoomers as they like to be called too.
Yeah.
Is I'm sitting at my brother's house and we're putting up security cameras, and my brother just did a big remodel on his house, built a new apartment like within it for his mother-in-law. So he's putting security cameras up and he wants to do it himself. I am not this guy. Like, I'm not this guy. My brother's like, he gets the directions, right? Like Clark Griswold style, like these things are coming out of a hat. And they're all in like Japanese, Russian, Korean. There's no English at all on any of these directions. And my brother Chris goes, here's the model number, Google it. And I'm like, okay, get on. I start Googling. My nephew comes up. He goes, what are you doing? I said, I go, your dad, my brother, Ty's uncle. I go, and my nephew's looking at me and he goes, I have an idea. And I go, what's your idea? He goes, look it up on YouTube. He goes, why are you going to sit here and read for 20 minutes?
Right.
Go on YouTube, man. And that was the defining moment. So now when I'm with Gen Z, or the Zoomers as we call it, I don't mention Google. I don't mention text messaging. I mention, hey, snap me, okay? Get me on Snapchat. You can get me, you can hit me up. You know what? If you want to find me on YouTube, check out my videos on YouTube. But hey, listen, and then if I ever talk to a Gen Z or a Zoomer, or even like as I'm teaching new people, I have a gentleman that I worked with at the International Pineapple Organization. He's awesome. He's a baby boomer like Hans. He asks me all the time, hey, can you research this? Can you do this? I send him YouTube links. And he always asks me, he goes, I guess I just really got to get into watching people doing it versus my mentality of always reading and then learning myself. We are all different visual learners versus reading learners. So I've adapted with Gen Z that they are both ways. So you got to kind of tread lightly on how to communicate with them and how to really train them.
The media is framing the coronavirus as another moment in history that's going to create a before and after. So what's next? Where do you think we're going to go?
You want me to go?
I don't have a crystal ball. I do think that the coronavirus is going to be another one of those defining moments in history. I don't think it's going to destroy our country, but I do feel really badly for all the 30+ million people, in the food industry. All the people that have lost their jobs right now. I do believe it's going to come roaring back, but I don't know. I think the thing about history we know about, but the future, nobody knows. I think that one of the scary things about this has shown terrorists and the small terrorist states the power of a virus to take down a country. That kind of scares me, and so I don't know. I have no crystal ball about the future. I think we boomers I don't believe in retirement myself. I think it's I hate that. I hate the concept, because to me it means I'm sidelined, I'm on the couch, I'm irrelevant. We boomers want to stay engaged, but we have to give up our power and we have to give up our authority. And again, that's why I love the movie The Intern, because Robert De Niro was this powerful company owner in the actual building that is now owned by somebody else, and he becomes the humble intern to Anne Hathaway. I love that, because that's if you're a boomer and you're listening to this, or even a builder, I saw my brother was watching, you've got to be humble. You've got to take a different position in society now. I'm happy to be a coach. I'm happy to be a mentor. I'm happy to be humble and help you in any way I can. Help me help you, So that's kind of my view of the future for us boomers. We still want to be engaged. We just have to realize it's no longer going to be from a position of control and authority.
Patrick?
Yeah, I agree. I would say, my kids are Gen Z, right? And my son he'll be 9 this year. My daughter's 5, but they know what the coronavirus is. They've got masks. So it's funny because Hans, I don't know if you remember this, but we traveled to Japan in 2015 during the H1N1 outbreak. And I remember everybody was telling me, you're crazy for going to Japan. You're crazy. I went on like a 4-week. I went to Japan, Korea, China with my 3-month-old daughter, my kids. And so we've had masks for years because, Hans, we've been in other countries. So when you're in Beijing, you wear a mask when you're in Beijing. The pollution is so bad.
I don't, but
you wear a mask. I mean, Hans has been over there so many times, but like you do. So, so we got these for our kids when we went over there, and we did all these things. So when the coronavirus outbreak happened, my son goes, "Where's our masks? Remember, Dad, when we were in China and Korea, we had our masks. Where's our masks?" And I sat there and I was like, "Oh, crap." And then, every time we go somewhere now, my daughter will go, "Don't touch that. It's Corona time." And I'm like, I start laughing, but it's so true. So I do think that this is going to shape, as if I met you guys probably 6 months ago, we'd probably come up, give each other a hug. "What's up, guys? Yeah, great to finally meet you in person. Boom, boom, boom. How's it going?" I think for our generation, it's still going to be like that after this, but I do not think it's going to be like that for the kids. I think we're going to get more interpersonal, as in we're going to use telecommunication more than we did now, because even like my nephew that I just talked about earlier, when I talked about coming to see him, he's like, "Wait a minute, you're not coming back to California, the coronavirus." You know what I mean? So even then, they're already thinking like, whoa, stay away, be away. So I think even when the kids go back to school, things start happening again. I think everybody's going to keep their distance. And I don't think it's going to be for 6 months, maybe for people like us, but for the kids growing up, I think they're going to stay their difference. Like my son tells me, he's like, I'm not going to give everybody high fives. Like, where have they been? So I do think that it's going to affect that. I think for the millennials and the Gen Xers that are coming up, I think this hit our pocketbooks a little bit for the first time in our lives. I think that our stocks, our 401ks that now we've been building for the last 10, 15 years, Hans has been building for 30 years, right? So his pocketbook got hit a little bit, right? Good amount of money. But this is where we are, where we just started getting over that hump and we're like, yeah, we're almost there. And then all of a sudden we're like, we are back to where we were 7 years ago. So I do think that we will see that. And I think that as millennials and Xers start getting into their late 30s and 40s, I think we're going to develop in how we manage money differently, how we save differently, and how we secure for our families. And I think that's going to be the biggest impact for millennials and Xers will be the financial and how they manage money, because as you have seen, how many people are out of jobs, how many people don't have 6-month savings. So I think that's going to be a very big impact moving forward.
Well, Hans and Patrick, it was a pleasure getting to know you, to talk to you, have this discussion. We're definitely going to link your book in the bottom of this video. So
appreciate it.
Yes. Darius, did you have anything else? I'm just gonna.
No, that's it. I'll be curious to see again what happens after this. I think you guys had a lot of really interesting stuff to say.